It's my great pleasure to introduce on the screen, and I know he can hear us there, but he can't physically be with us, but we're doing something a little bit different this year. And in this world of technology, it's quite incredible that we're able to have Brother Frank O'Shea, who's on the other side of the world, join us tonight. I'll just start by, I think many of you will know a fair bit about Frank, but Frank is from the class of 1971. And he began with the Christian Brothers in 1972, where he was encouraged to complete a diploma of teaching, setting in motion what has been a lifetime of service as an educator. He began as a founding brother of Edmund Rice Camps, a volunteer organisation that now operates throughout the world, providing an opportunity for children and families from marginalised backgrounds to experience positive role modelling and to break from difficult lives. From there, Frank has gone on to serve at schools in Tonga, Tanzania, Sudan, and now in Kenya. His work has gone beyond the classroom, where he has significantly contributed to the development of systems and resources to ensure that the education being offered leads to opportunities for the students and their community. Frank's real passion has been in humanising what was often a very discriminating education system that prided itself on high standards at the expense of excessive failure rates. Frank challenged educational practices, introduced practical electives, implemented sustainable schooling, and provided opportunities for international volunteers and schools to journey with students and families as they were removed from the shackles of poverty. In among all of this, he's also managed to have a career as an international cricketer, representing Tonga in the South Pacific Games and Tanzania in the African Cricket Tournament. Following one of the briefest retirements on record, Frank is back at the helm of the Ruben Centre in one of the largest slums in Nairobi in Kenya. The Ruben Centre, thanks to Frank's leadership and work, is a hub of social services that provides quality education, healthcare, financial and social services to children and families. So we welcome Frank here via video link tonight for this evening to hear just a little bit about what he's been doing and about life in Kenya. And so, Frank, hopefully you can hear us all really well. And I might start with a question for you.
Yeah.
And that is, retired and done, but what happened to the plan?
Well, probably like a lot of my plans in life, there have been miserable plans that have not reached fruition. But I welcome the God of surprises. So all of a sudden I'm back here. I like that introduction. The class of 71, actually, I got expelled by the brothers in 1969, gently, and I went to Sunbury for a year, agricultural college. I knew nothing but farming. And then I had a year hanging out in 71, and then I joined in 72. So there's another one of my plans that didn't quite go to thing. But pleasure to be here. It's May Day in Kenya, so there's a bit of a holiday. Tomorrow we have national demonstrations. So today will be quieter than tomorrow. So what happened? Well, my successor, again, best laid plans were there. And in 2 years, it didn't work. It unraveled. And so there were protests in the streets, in the slums, demanding my return. So in 3 days, I jumped on a plane and came back. It's a bit sad, but it's okay. We're putting it together. I came back for 3 reasons. One, the people of the slums were screaming out. They needed me. They needed Ruben Centre. 2, the staff who had a miserable time for 2 years, very, very dysfunctional leadership. And the 3rd, I came back for the donors who have supported it so greatly. And they needed to make sure that all their previous work, especially through the 500 supporters group in MCG, that they felt Ruben Centre was back on its feet and thriving again, which it is. So there's a little bit of the summary.
Thanks for that, Frank. Can you tell those here in the audience with us tonight a little bit more about the Ruben Centre? What's a typical day look like for you?
I arrive usually around 7:30 in the morning. I often have no idea what the day will bring, but we have about 17 projects going on in this slum centre of 3 acres. We have 3,200 kids in a primary school. The government this year just said we had to take a junior secondary high school as well. So that added 485 kids to our population. And so we had to divide. We had no extra rooms. So the largest class is 129 kids in grade 2. That was to fit in the junior secondary. The old days in the White House, the brothers used to talk about 70 or 80 in Form 1, but 129 is not bad. And then there's Health Centre. This morning I'm here. It's a holiday, but there's 4 babies have been born in the birthing unit. I could hear one being born, and then I went up and had a look. So then there's social work. There's a Ruben radio station. We're the most listened to community radio in the country. So we started that to be an advocate for the poor and the marginalised. So we always promoting a better world through that. There's social programs, there's vocation training. We've recently picked up a few big jobs from international network of hotels. We have a great weaving centre. So a whole lot of stuff goes on here. Half the time I don't know really what's going on, but it's happening. And most of my day is just sort of responding to what emerges. I really have a style that's very visible. I'm out and about, and so the door's always open, and I respond from there. Occasionally there's a planned activity.
That's great. And some of the best leadership is exactly that. You don't need to know what's going on. Just get everyone else to do your work for you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about life in Kenya? What are some of the challenges of operating something like the Ruben Centre? You mentioned about the dysfunctional leadership after a couple of years and all of those sorts of things. What are the challenges to get the people there the support that they need?
Yes, I often say Kenyans would rule the world if they had good governance. And unfortunately, since independence, it's been a mixture of nonsense and more nonsense, and had a dictator for 20 odd years. And last year they had elections and they were rigged again. And the opposition has been protesting in the streets. So we've had 5 days where the whole city of 5 million people, where I am, Nairobi, has been locked down. And there's another one planned for tomorrow. There's often a lot of violence in those. Unfortunately, not a lot of people being killed at this stage, but it's getting worse and it's getting hotter. Fortunately, the slum where I am, there's about 600,000 people. In fact, around us, we have 500 acres and we have 350,000 people in 500 acres. I used to say we'd run a few sheep on that in Australia. But fortunately, this particular slum is not really, it's a slum of a lot of people, of a lot of different tribes. So they haven't got the big ethnic divide, which some of them have. So we have been spared a fair bit of violence in this part. But it'll be interesting to see whether people are able to come to work tomorrow. The slum people, they're just marginalised. Nobody listens to them. We're the only public school in here. It's a public sponsored school. I got funds from Ireland a few years ago and built it. So we have to toe the line with the government on things. We were the only health centre in here too. But the people, of course, love the place. And that's why they were out on the streets when it looked like closing in January this year. So it's great to be among them. I feel very safe and welcomed. It's the privileged context to live the gospel, I claim, that if you're supposed to be doing good works, well, there's a million of them to do. In fact, I joined the brothers. My father had a great phrase, Patrick O'Shea. Some of you would remember Pat O'Shea, but his vision in life was to be handy. And I certainly feel I'm handy here.
That's great to hear. Your life as a Christian Brother's taken you all over the world. Perhaps if we change tact a little bit, and can you share with the audience here tonight perhaps a story around a place or something that's influenced you over that time that's more on the funnier, light-hearted side of things? Is there a particular moment in experience overseas somewhere that, as you say, didn't quite go to plan, but you saw the funny side of it?
Okay, it's certainly what you'd call around the world in a unfamiliar path, really. In 1982, Frank Chappell probably had something to do with it. Said, "We want you in Tonga." I said, "Well, I've never heard of Tonga. Tell me where it is, I'll go." And so I finished up there in 83. It's a very small country. I learnt my first foreign language. I went on to learn 2 more after that. I lived on a remote island with a few people. Extraordinary place. I finished up the Kings. They heard I had a BSc in human movement. So I finished up the trainer of the King of Tonga, Taufahau Tupou IV, and he lost 100 kilos in rowing and biking, got him down to 143. He got another 15 years of life. Anyway, they made me play cricket with him. The next stop was Tanzania, 94. Built a school, worked with the Maasai's. My greatest friend there had 9 wives, and I educated half of the 56 children. So they always couldn't figure out where my wives were, but he coped with that. I went to South Sudan. That was extraordinarily different from a place like Tonga. And I only lasted 2 years there. I was there when they voted for independence. And it just was not a country ready for me going at 100 miles an hour, wanting to change and do things. In fact, the first Minister for Education couldn't read and write. He'd been a general in the army and had been fighting 51 years. So he was having trouble understand my vision for things. So I said, let me out of here. And then I finish up here in Kenya. But I did put out a few photos of that journey. And there's a couple of things in that sort of stand out. I don't know whether they're lighthearted, but one stage in Tanzania, I climbed an active volcano in the Rift Valley, about 12,000 feet, and sat in the river after it because it was hard work. We left at 4 a.m. in the morning and got back about 3. And I sat in the river anyway. Out of that, 9 days later, I had anthrax. And nobody kind of knew what was wrong with me, but I was swelling up anyway. Eventually, I died in hospital, was resuscitated. I had hemorrhaging. I lost 20 kilos in weight. I had a red blood cell count of 3.3. There he is. Oh no, that's after hitting a giraffe. There he is. That's in the hospital in Nairobi. 20 odd kilos lighter, and they took gangrene out of my neck. And so I got another shot at life out of that. But then I recovered. I got back there into Tanzania, and the next thing, I was in a bus going to Tanzania, and a giraffe came through the side window, just where I was sitting. And there it is.
We've got a photo of that one. Can you tell us a bit more about, how that came to pass?
Well, this gets a bit lighthearted. So I was reading the book, actually, The Horse Whisperer, and I always sit on a single seat near a 20-seater bus. And the giraffe came through there. I have not much information after that, but I finished up in hospital. 2 days later, they found me in Arusha, the brothers. I don't know what happened in that 24 hours or 48 hours. But a week later, the American architect was down because we were building a school. And he said, "Oh, did you hear about the giraffe that ran into a bus, or the bus ran into a giraffe?" And I said, "John," he's American, I said, "look at me." And I had no front tooth and the black eyes and all that. And he said, "You were on it?" I said, "Yes." I said, "What do you know about it?" And he said he had an American friend following who was in a car, and it was in a native wildlife area between Mount Kilimanjaro National Park and Serengeti. So the bus, apparently, he said the giraffe was thrashing around like mad in the bus and people were screaming and there was blood everywhere. And then they said, "Has anyone got a gun?" And this American said, "Yeah, I have a gun, but I'm not shooting a giraffe." A giraffe was on the 10 shilling note, the 10,000 shilling note. So it's a very iconic animal in the country. Anyway, some bloke says, "Yeah, I know how to use a gun, give it to me." So, and I said to this John, who was telling me the story, and I said, "And what happened?" He said, the bloke had 2 shots and missed. But then a Maasai bloke turned up with a big knife. They always carry a big knife, and he cut its throat. So they then got 2 of us out and got us to hospital. The other bloke died. He had no arm. But I said, "Oh, that's a good story. I'll tell that one day." Giraffe hits bus. 1 person dies, 1 lost his arm, and 2 died of gunshot wounds from the missed attempt of killing the giraffe. So anyway, I survived. A bit of brain damage, but I sort of worked out of it. Learning another language in Sudan taught my brain how to work around the damage.
Frank, just a couple more questions for you, and in particular about Sudan. So obviously things are, not travelling too well there again in that country at the moment. But when you were there, you were teaching prisoners. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, I learned another language. So I learned the mother tongue of Zande tribe, because that was the tribal one. And it's in an area right over near there they go back there. So where does Edmund Rice turn up? Well, where are the poor? Even in South Sudan, there's a limit between those who are a bit well off and those who are poor. So, and what would Edmund Rice be doing? Where are the marginalised? And I got teaching in a refugee camp because Joseph Kony, the Lord's Resistance Army, was running amok, and I could speak to these Congolese refugees in the Zande language, and I was teaching a bit of English. But anyway, there I talked my way into the prison. I said, "Is there any education in the prison in the local town I was in?" And the superintendent said, "No. What do you want to educate them for?" And I said, "Well, it's a human right." So anyway, I got myself in there, and there's an image of them. And we had interviews, and they'd sit around all day under a mango tree. But I found out the ones in leg irons, they were the murderers. So, but anyway, it went on, and I was 3 days a week there for a couple of hours. Anyone who wanted to come. I finished up having some of the guards come along and learn. But some of these prisoners, it was really reading and writing in their mother tongue. But when we had jokes and all that, they'd rattle their chains. That was their form of applause. But it was, and then I arrived one day to the prison, and the superintendent said, "We're locking you up." And I said, "Oh yeah, what for?" "Some prisoners escaped last night, 8 of them. They got over the wall." And I said, "Well, how'd they get over the wall?" And the superintendent said, "Your desks that you brought in the class for the classroom, they stacked them up and got over the wall. So we're locking you up until we round them all up." So I said, "Well, I thought you were going to put a door on the wall on that little room you gave me. If you let me in and I can see the door on the room, you can lock me up," because I knew there was no door. Anyway, the superintendent said, "All right, come again, we'll find them. So anyway, that was another experience of working in South Sudan. But you mentioned Sudan in the news, poor old, it's the largest Sudan, not South Sudan, but they're fighting. It's just horrible, horrible to think that a few people can cause such death in a place like Africa. You have Joseph Kony who's doing it now. This is two generals fighting. Poor old Sudan, the largest country in Africa. And I've been there. I crossed over the border from where I was at one stage. So anyway, it's part of my memory of being somewhere, but never, ever want to return.
And finally, Frank, bring it back to your time at CBC. And when you are back in Australia and have been here the last 5 or 6 years that I've been in Warrnambool, you've had a couple of visits back to Emmanuel College, and the students always are just in awe of the stories that you share with them. Tonight, for those of us that are here, and particularly the alumni from CBC, can you share some of your memories of your time at school? What are the things that stand out the most to you at those years in the late 60s at CBC Warrnambool?
Okay, thank you. Well, I arrived from Pernem, and in Pernem there was 55 kids in the local school. We lived across the road, so it wasn't very far. But I was in grade 4 and it was September and I really knew nothing. So I was pretty feral and wondered what this hieroglyphics was on the blackboard, and I learned it was the alphabet. So I had to repeat grade 4. So my education was not very high and mighty. So I repeated grade 4, and there was a Miss Murphy teaching there. Anyway, she was nurturing away at me. But this brother Brian Cleary, who's there, he used to come down when I was in grade 4, 1963, I think, and he had football, of course, and we had a pickup game with the local state school. And so there's an early memory. I remember then Trevor Gibbon, he was, and an early memory was the athletic sports. Red, green, gold, and blue, I guess. But Brother Gibbon was a great taskmaster of getting all the marching group into order as we prepared for the day. So I certainly have memories of those. And it's a bit sad poor old Frank Chappell couldn't be there, because he was my Latin teacher in Form 1. I didn't learn anything, but I was there. But we have great chats about it all, and I know how much he feels so pleased and such a vivid memory of the Warrnambool years. I think he was there 12 or 13 years. But Brian Cleary was certainly there a long time, a legend in his own lunchbox, certainly in Western Australia. So that kind of activity. No, I had good memories of the brothers. Watch them down there on the oval do kick to kick after school. But I offended one brother very badly, and he nearly threw me off the White House small, as you walked up the back on the White House, the stairs, the outside stairs, threw me there because he found out I was playing cricket for Nestles under 16, because I couldn't get a game with CBC under 16. Here I was, half the size of a threepence. And so I went off and played with Nestles, and Robert Bruce was in the team. And we finished up beating CBC in a semi-final, total first loss for their year. So I didn't make many runs that one, but I got into the grand final and made runs against Croy. So there's a little memory. Nestles with Ronnie Fish being the coach. So I'm sure there's some people there know the Fish family, and there was a Mackenzie playing. A few of them have been in sport over the years. So yeah, memory of the CBC was certainly the field, the athletics. There was football. I played under 15s for CBC Gold got a few kicks. We made a final once. So then Kevin Delaney was a good teacher in Form 3 and 4. He still talks about it, but I was no student, and they said, I think it's time you moved on. In those days, you could leave when you were 15, and what was the point of hanging around? So all I wanted to do was be a farmer. But they sent me, my mum said, you're too little and young yet. We're sending you to Sunbury Agricultural College. So there's a little bit. Good memories. And of course, I found real people there among those brothers. And they, at the end of 71, I had a motorbike and was farming. And then I rode in one day and said, I've come to join you. So I guess that was a bit hilarious for them.
Frank, while we've still got you here, we do have one of your fellow brothers, Trevor, who'd like to say a couple of things just in response to some of the things that you've been talking about tonight. I'll pass over to Trevor.
Found it very interesting, Frank. I was in South Sudan. Frank was talking about going in there. I was principal of a school in South Sudan for 3 years. And so I can relate to what you were saying about South Sudan. Don't underestimate what Frank said about Ruben community. I went there in its very early days when we'd just taken over from a group of sisters with a school, leaving a building behind. That's about all. And Frank was involved in setting it up with a police station, so there was law and order in the slums next door, setting it up with a medical centre, so that there was medical care for the slums next door, and particularly, and he's put a few of these stories in our brothers' newsletters, the birthing unit, and he can tell some great stories about his involvement with the birthing unit there in that medical centre. So, but the Ruben Centre, he came out of there, and they put someone else in charge, and within 12 months, they were begging Frank to go back. So he's just done that, and that's why he's now talking from Africa. It wasn't his choice to be back, but he felt was needed there. So that's Frank, the Frank that you're talking about. He's a most remarkable Christian brother, I know that, yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.
Just one more thing, you finish. You could shut it down for 5 minutes and I'll just sit it out, but there might be someone else who knows the O'Shea's in there and wants to say something else, just reach into that historical connection with CBC or whatever. And I'd love to hear another question after 5 minutes or something. If that sort of thing was valid, that's okay too.
Is there anyone out there that is connected to the O'Shea family in any way, or any of Frank's family? We've got a question. What's happened to Mick O'Shea?
Yeah, well, a good question. He's
at the reunion yesterday, but he might be MIA.
Was he at the reunion?
Yes, he was at the reunion. Yep.
Right, he comes from Castlemaine, the oldest of us. And again, my mother had 14 babies, so I never ceased to be amazed here, and I was holding one this morning. I know now what the effort it is about having babies. And I often give a bit of a joke to some of the young women. I say, oh yeah, what number is this baby? And they look at you and say first or second. They get a bit sheepish if they say the fourth, and then I'll say, well, keep going. My mother had 14. So you got a lap to do yet. And they all have a laugh. Yes, but Mick, the oldest brother, he's had a fair bit of ill health, but it's great that he's still going. And Candice was the one who told me about the reunion only about 4 days ago. So I got onto him and Des. I don't know whether Des got there the next. And he was dead keen to go and meet Brother Gibbons and Brother Cleary. So I only told them 2 days ago it was on. So I'm glad that Michael got there. And
another
Kevin
question.
Chiller, I know Peter Chiller very well. I see him there.
Now, a lot of us went to school with Des and Claire.
Yes.
So what's happened to them? I haven't seen them for years and years and years.
Hmm. Well, again, Des is in Werribee, and I thought he was all keen to come. He said, "I've never been to anything," so I don't know how he didn't get there. So he's in Werribee. He was a priest in the Ballarat Diocese for years. He's a grandfather now. Enjoys that. He had one daughter, and he's got one grandchild and one about to come. Claire's is still in Warrnambool. She's the only O'Shea that's remained faithful to the bull, and she left at 15, like I was, and has worked away there and was at the base hospital for the last 15 years or so as a receptionist, and only retired last year. Of course, she's married Paul Jones, so you've got to keep up with the Joneses if you want to keep up with Claire and Paul. They live on the home property. They built a house where I have Josephine, of course. Josephine, the younger sister, she taught at Emmanuel for about 16 years, food technology. She also came out here to Ruben and helped set up a catering unit. So she gave up the ghost last year. All the O'Sheas were retiring last year, including myself. But the plan didn't work. So Josie retired, Annette retired, Claire retired, Frank retired. So anyway, that's family life.
Yeah, Frank. Anthony Marnie from Marnie's at Allansford.
Oh, yes,
So,
yes.
yeah, we used to go to your place a lot when we were young lads. The families are very close. So I just, one of your sisters taught us, was it I was in grade 3 at St. Anne's? Yeah. So one of the twin girls,
Oh, yeah.
which was, right. Geez, I hope you know him.
Mary, Bobby, Mary.
Yeah,
No, Marita,
that's it. Yeah, Marita taught us. So, yeah, no, we had a great connection with your family. We used to go to your place there at Allansford a lot, and had a lot of fun growing up with your family over the years. So there you go.
And thank you. And Dad used to go and help umpire her sport on a football, but I'll correct you there. It was CBC where she taught in grade 3, Marita.
Well, Frank, we've taken up quite a bit of your time today on a day off too. You're meant to be retired and you're meant to be having a day off, and here we are getting you to talk to the CBC alumni tonight. So, look, on behalf of everyone that's here this evening, and again from the staff and everyone at Emmanuel College who continue to support the Ruben Centre, we just want to give a heartfelt thanks. You know, you are part of our inspiring alumni at the college, and I know every time that I hear you speak about what you've been up to over the past 50 years or so, certainly very humbling. It makes you sort of reflect on what you've done yourself as a person and think, geez, I haven't really done much at all. So, Frank, on behalf of all of us, we want to wish you well. We hope that, you know, you can continue to get the Ruben Centre back on track, but at the same time too, hopefully, you know, hand it over to someone else at some point in time, so you can enjoy, you know, some of your own time, because you've given a lifetime of service, which is just a great credit to yourself. So well done. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you, and I hope to join you next year in happy retirement. In person would be wonderful. Enjoy the evening. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much. Yes.